Chanel was 14 when she first sold her body to a man on Southeast 82nd.
A girl that was staying in the same foster home took me to 82nd and showed me how to do it.
She is 18 now, and for the last 4 years she's been a prostitute. The money is good, she says. Someday she could make $1,000, and she didn't have to go to school or listen to her mom.
It was an adrenaline rush going out and working because I could do what I wanted to do.
In a park near Lloyd Center, she connected with a pimp, a young man who took pictures of her, posted ads for her services on Craigslist, promised to take her to other states where they could make a lot of money. But the relationship had a brutal downside.
I didn't wear what he wanted me to wear. I would get beat. I didn't make enough money. I would get beat. If I would get raped and he didn't believe me, I would get beat for that.
Portland Vice Officer Laura Lindsay tells me this is pretty common. Pimps make a lot of promises they never intend to keep.
They promise them love, they promise them a good life, they promise them a home, clothing, whatever they want. They promise to take care of them.
Here's the shocker. Chanel is not all that unusual. Police tell me there are hundreds of teenage girls selling themselves on the streets of the metro area, or you can find them for sale on the internet, on so-called dating sites or on Craigslist. Vice Sergeant Doug Justice says Portland is known nationwide as a hub of teenage prostitution.
In the last 2 years, the city of Portland was number 2 overall in the country. Seattle was number 1.
And these are kids we're talking about.
We're seeing them on the street now as early as 10 and 11 a lot of times. They're saying the average age now is 13, 14.
And once a girl's been doing this for more than a year or two, they will never be kids again.
They just are so brainwashed from the psychological damage of being sexually abused 10 to 15 times a night by 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old men that they are just so messed up mentally. It takes a huge amount of resources to get them back to be a normal functioning child.
If you think your daughter would never be lured into prostitution, think again. It's happening to some of Portland's best and brightest teenagers, cleverly recruited out of local high schools, even middle schools. We'll explore that tomorrow. I'm Mark Provo, KPAM 860.
Child prostitution involving girls as young as 10 or 11 has exploded across the United States in the past year or so. It either has exploded or we're just noticing a little bit more. And as KPAM's 860's Mark Provo reports in his special series, Stolen Innocence, this one is one of the worst in the country.
According to police, the Portland area has more teenage prostitutes working than any other city in the country except Seattle and Oakland. 18-year-old Chanel sold herself for 4 years, says she did it because of the freedom. No school, not having to follow mom's orders, and the money she could make boggles the mind.
I was making like $1,000 a day when I was 15 or a little bit more.
Chanel was introduced to prostitution when she was 14 by a roommate in her foster home. Other girls are recruited at high school, even middle school, sometimes by other teenage girls called bottom bitches who come on campus and spot the vulnerable ones.
Say, for example, one of the girls is having a bad day. You move your way in, become friends, maybe buy her something.
Keith Bickford, Multnomah Sheriff's Deputy and Director of the Oregon Human Trafficking Task Force.
His parents won't buy her a cell phone, won't buy her text, unlimited texting hours or whatever you want to call it. The pimp can move in that way, too, and say, hey, your parents don't love you. I'll show you how much I love you, I care about you, I care about your feelings. Let me get you the cell phone or buy you that dress that you wanted that they won't buy.
And that'll work, says Portland Vice Cop Laura Lindsay, even with the smartest girls.
Even the best child, the straight-A student, the, honor student, the one that's in athletics, if you promise them the right thing, every kid wants something.
Among those things?
New clothes, new pair of their favorite jeans, probably iPod players.
There is another common thread here. Many of the girls who go into prostitution were molested as they were growing up, often by a relative. In Chanel's case, it was her mom, Dory's longtime boyfriend. It happened when Mom was at work.
She finally confessed that my boyfriend for 12 years had raped her and was molesting her and giving her the drugs in my house that I didn't even know.
The girls rather be out on the street, with 10 different guys a night than being at home getting raped by dad, grandpa, uncle.
Tomorrow, parents who fight to get their daughters back and some warning signs that your child may be talking to the wrong people. I'm Mark Provo, KPAM 860.
It has to be one of the most devastating things a parent can find out, and that is that their teenage daughter has been lured into prostitution. KPAM 860's Mark Provo continues his special series called Stolen Innocence, with a look today at what those parents go through trying to get their children back.
Dory's daughter Chanel ran away 4 years ago when she was 14 to be a prostitute. First in Portland, then on the road to several other states with her pimp, a young gangster who was collecting the money she made, beating her when she displeased him, and putting Chanel's life in more and more danger.
The only way I knew if Chanel was around, alive, I would log in and check her MySpace to see when the last time she logged in was. So if I knew if she logged in yesterday or today, she at least is still breathing.
Each time her daughter got arrested, Dory went to bring her home, hoping each time Chanel would give up the sex trade.
I had to get her back from Las Vegas. I had to get her back from California. I think California twice. And then from Seattle.
Teresa fought a similar battle for her 14-year-old niece, who she's raising. Haley began skipping school weeks at a time, hanging out with another teenage girl who introduced her to drugs and then prostitution. Patricia found out what Haley was doing by checking the Multnomah County Sheriff's website.
Find her picture in the charges that were pending against her. Prostitution and theft.
She searched for Haley in places where teen prostitutes ply their trade, especially around the cheap motels on Southeast 82nd.
The youngest one looked to me to be about 10. They pretend like they are waiting for the bus. They never catch the bus. People come by and solicit them, and they'll get in their cars or whatever.
She caught up with Haley once at 1 o'clock in the morning in Pioneer Courthouse Square with two men that Patricia figures were pimps. She called police, but Haley gave the officers another name, swore she was 18, not 14, and they told Patricia they had no reason to take her into custody. Haley is now 15. She is in juvenile custody. Patricia thinks when she's released next spring, Haley might have a chance at a normal life. These are two parents who've gone through tremendous emotional pain and effort to get their teenagers back from prostitution. But there are other parents, as Portland Vice Officer Laura Lindsay, who don't feel that same responsibility.
We go find him and go to return him home, and they're like, well, we really don't want him here. Can't you put him somewhere? And that's the last thing you want to hear.
Tomorrow I'll look at attempts to at least slow down teen prostitution and punish those who are making so much money from it. I'm Mark Provo, KPAM 860.
Here's a record we'd rather not have. There are more child prostitutes in Portland metro area than in most other American cities. KPAM 860's Mark Provo continues his special reports on stolen innocence with a look at just how big that business has become.
There's a slick, all-color 30 or 40-page directory being handed out free on the streets of Portland, Beaverton, Vancouver, Salem, sexy pictures of the girls, and a detailed map to the clubs and sex shops where they're available. I'm told one page in this color directory costs the pimp or trafficker $1,100, and that's actually a good investment.
One child, underage prostitute, can make a pimp $200,000 a year. Just one kid.
Deputy Keith Bigford says each pimp runs 5 to 10 girls. Do the math. Some are making well over $1 million. Portland Vice Sergeant Doug Justice points out that even when police do rescue the girls, get them away from their pimps temporarily, there are no shelters where they can be sent for the long-term help they need. Secure shelters, he says, are vital.
They would put these little girls in there. They would lock the door. They would give them counseling, medical attention, educational stuff, and job skills training.
Senator Ron Wyden wants to set up some of those shelters with federal money, tells KPAM's Terry Travis.
There will be assistance for shelter. The total for this program is going to be about $45 million. So that would be meaningful in terms of shelter for trafficking victims and clothing and trying to help the victims from returning to the street.
Former Southwest Washington Congresswoman Linda Smith runs Shared Hope International, which works to reduce child prostitution and encourage vigorous prosecution of the pimps and especially the men who buy sex from little girls.
For my 13, 14-year-old granddaughters, would I want men that bought them to get off with a slap on the wrist, a fine, or maybe a John school? No, I'd want them to go to jail for rape of a child.
There are tough federal laws up to life in prison for sexual trafficking of anyone under 18, but she says they're seldom enforced at the local level. And when a child prostitute is sent to juvenile jail for her own protection, remember, no suitable shelters, Smith points out that we have just turned the victim, the child, into a criminal.
What's wrong with that is what other victim of a crime do we put in jail and charge with the crime committed against them?
Tomorrow, warning signs for parents. Is your teenager being approached to get into prostitution? I'm Mark Provo, KPAM 860.
What are the chances that the teenage girl next door or your own daughter has been approached in school or at the mall to become a child prostitute? And that's happening. And if it is, how would you know? KPAM 860's Mark Provo lists some of the warning signs in his special series, Stolen Innocence.
Want to see child prostitution up close? It's easy. Just cruise Southeast 82nd on a Friday or Saturday night. Watch the girls run up to any car that stops on certain blocks or get a CB radio and check the chatter at one of those big truck stops along the freeway.
Yeah, I'm over at Jubit's here looking for any lot lizards. Any of them around?
Stepped into that lounge yet? See if there's any in there? Yeah, I got absolutely hammered in there last week. Had a really good time.
Lot lizards, of course, the young girls that float around in the truck stops offering sex. That tape recorded by Vancouver's Shared Hope International to help show us just how bad the problem is. Keith Bickford, who heads Oregon's Human Trafficking Task Force, says it's easy for a pimp to approach a girl who's having a bad day at school, treat her nicely, buy her things, and persuade her to return his favor by just turning one trick for him.
Once you get these girls to turn that first trick,